Third down and 20.
What is going on? Welcome back. 3rd and 20 podcast, episode 5454. My name is Frank Entwistle. We've got the main man himself, Mr. Steed. Steed, how's it going, dude?
Dude, doing swimmingly. Ready for today's show. Ready for the Hawks to play in the Eastern Conference Finals tonight. And, can't complain on this side of paradise.
Nice, dude. All right, well, let's start it off. We're going to go NFC West over-unders, continuing on the over-under segment that we've been doing. And this is a division that's tough. We actually did pretty well last year in it. You went 3-1. I went 2-1 because I forgot to pick the Seahawks last year. So this year I'm going to pick the Seahawks. We're going to start off with...
Should we start with the Seahawks then first?
No, we're starting with the Rams. We're starting with the Rams because I was prepared to do the Rams. We're starting off with the LA Rams, my favorite to win this division, so I'm going to easily hit the over here. Honestly, the addition of Stafford, I think, is going to be huge for this offense. You pick up a couple of speed demons at receiver and Tutu Atwell and Deshaun Jackson as well. We get a second year in the system, Cam Akers, a system that first-year running backs have really struggled in, but second year, we saw Gurley really explode. I think that a lot of people are expecting Cam Akers to do the same, and that is including me. Man, and on top of that, you still have these stud defensive players, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and a lot of underrated guys in this group. The big loss was John Johnson, but I really don't think it'll impact this group a whole ton. Man, I really feel like the Rams are in a prime position to make a run back to the Super Bowl. I think this is the strongest roster they've had in the past 2 or 3 seasons. And I think that McVay is really ready to go. I'm not sure if anyone listens to that McVay and Peter Schrager podcast, but man, McVay is always a confident guy, but I feel like this year, now that he's got a quarterback that he knows can really play, man, it really feels like Sean McVay, the confidence is flowing, and that he feels like, dude, they are ready to compete this year. So Rams over-under is 10.5. I am smashing this over.
I'm with you on it, too. I'm honestly surprised it's only at 10.5 because when we're picking out our Super Bowl winners and our conference champions, we at least both had the Rams in the conference championship. I think this is more towards a 13 or 14 team, win team. Like you said, you get a tremendous upgraded quarterback in Matthew Stafford, a veteran who, really has shined in Detroit in a terrible franchise. Now you put him in one of the more established franchises in the league that's been competitive ever since McVay's been head coach there. And you're right. Yeah, John Johnson, I think it's going to be – it hurts them a little bit, but they are always good at finding guys to plug in these holes alongside of their top-end talent. They have the best D-line in the league in Aaron Donald, and they have the best corner in the league in Jalen Ramsey. So, and I know they lose Staley too, but there's just so much firepower on this defensive side of the ball, where I don't think it will phase them too much. And I'm also on the Cam Akers hype train. You saw him very late last season really picking up and was crucial in that playoff win against the Seahawks where he really shined too. So now with the full season under his belt and, what's really could be dangerous is just Sean McVay with a really good running game and an established quarterback in Matthew Stafford.
The other thing too, before I move on from the Rams, is that this is a team that we all know they trade away their first-round picks. That's been their prerogative. That's been their MO for the past couple of years. Hey, let's trade away our late first-round picks for established players, which if you look at – we did a video a while back kind of analyzing the Lions and Rams trade and kind of the value of late first-round picks. And at least I came to the conclusion – I'm not sure about you, Steed – that I agree with what the Rams are doing and that these late first-round picks are kind of overrated when you can get – established stud players that are top tier guys, Jalen Ramsey's and Matt Stafford's. Why am I taking these late first round picks that if you look at the hit rates of them getting a multiple team all pro level player, we calculated 4 of them, you have a 35% chance with any first round pick of hitting a multiple team all pro. I think it even lowers when you go just from pick 17 to 32. But not only that, the Rams have done a pretty good job outside of the first round adding talent to this football team.
Mm-hmm.
We all know Cam Akers, who we were just talking about, was a second round pick. They had a nice little value pick in Jordan Fuller in the 6th round last year, who's going to
Yeah,
be,
he was huge for him last year.
yeah, that number 1 safety now. I still think that Taylor Rapp is a safety that can play, who they took in the 2nd round of 2019, and he might be able to take a step forward. They added a couple interesting picks this year, guys like Bobby Brown, Robert Rochelle in the 4th round, who are 2 guys that I'm not necessarily in love with, but they are guys that I had my eye on coming into the draft. Tutu Atwell, I know, is a guy that you liked a lot, Steed, as a dude that can maybe not necessarily be like a stud fantasy player, but that can add like an X factor to your offense, especially this offense.
Yeah, take the
Man,
top off.
I think that the Rams had one of the sneaky, pretty decent drafts, and no one's going to really talk about it because they don't have those first round picks. So we're both hitting the over.
Yeah, easily.
Let's go into a team that we both hit the over on last year that we missed, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. Their over-under was 10.5 last year. It's still at 10.5 this year. We both hit the over last year. This is a group that we were in love with this defense and had a lot of injuries to that defensive line. I mean, you had a lot of injuries in general for the Niners, and everything kind of got out of whack.
Yeah.
Extra game, line hasn't moved. I'm actually going to throw this one to you, Steed. Steed, because I know you like Kyle Shanahan a lot. I mean, we both like Kyle Shanahan a lot, but you've always been on the Kyle Shanahan train. But you're not on
I know.
But you're not on the what's his name? The kid they drafted.
Trey Lance.
Yeah, you're not on the Lance train. I mean, granted, they're probably still going to start Jimmy G, but like, what are you thinking here at 10.5?
I think this is probably one of the hardest teams for me to pick, and it's basically what you just said. Is I love Shanny. I think he's a top 3 coach in the league, especially offensive mind. I don't think there's too many coaches better in the game than him. Maybe you can make an argument for McVay, but I'm not a big Trey Lance guy, and the thing is, I've seen him win 13 games with Jimmy G. So, and you throw in an extra game here, and I know their defense is not as stout, especially not as stout as they were coming in last season. But I do like some of their free agent signings, especially beefing up that O-line, where if you're going to find a guy like Trey Sermon, who they just drafted, I think who could be a tremendous back in this system, I'm going to take the over on him. I'm going to believe in him. Even if Jimmy G's the starter for a little bit, I still think they'll win ball games with him. I think they're just too well coached and have a good enough roster where I can't just think they're going to go under. This is a team I see fighting for that wild card spot, probably around like 11 or 12 wins I would put them at. But I'm going to take the over on the 49ers.
Man, I'm so torn on this 49ers football team because on paper, their defense got a lot worse. Not that it might play a lot worse. It did, right? Their secondary is a shell on paper of its former self. But I mean, their defensive line, their front 7 is still a bunch of studs, right? And offensively, man, this is an offense that looks phenomenal. And you really have to look no further than up front. Trent Williams, they pick up Alex Mack. He's still got McGlinchey. George Kittle, healthy, is basically an extra tackle that has the talent level of like a stud receiver in the passing game. Oh, man, you are right. This is a team that I am really torn on. This whole division,
I think it really comes down to their quarterback play. Quarterback play for this team could really carry them or not. If Jimmy G comes out there and plays, good, then they'll be good. Or if he's not, then they bench him for Trey Lance. And Trey Lance is the 3rd overall kind of guy you drafted him for, then the team should be excellent,
Part of me, the reason I'm struggling with this so much is that It's almost like I forget what division I kind of posed. Oh, it was the Titans and Colts, right? It's like,
Mm,
what do you find more likely? The Seahawks winning 10 games or the Niners winning 11? That's the battle that because I think that only one of them is going to happen, especially with how much I really like the Rams. Which one is going to happen? Like, do you like, because I like the Seahawks a lot, mainly because you talk about quarterbacks. You have Russell Wilson,
yeah, I mean,
and
that is true.
their defense, for as much crap and as much flack as they got the first half of the season, the second half of the season was a completely different Seahawks defense. It was a defense that was actually really good. I'm going to go with the under. I hate it, but I'm
Okay.
going to go with the under. Reason being, this just feels like a team once again that their starting lineup looks so good, and that's why you get so scared to take the under. But I feel like a couple of injuries, which happens to every football team, kind of like with the Chargers every year, just kills this team. You have a couple of injuries, and all of a sudden the guys that fill in aren't good enough. Um, so like God forbid Bosa misses half the season,
Yeah, he
which
goes
I'm not
down again.
expecting it, but like you could say that for Kinlaw or Armstead, right? The real meat of that defense. What happens to that defense again? What if Fred Warner goes down? All of a sudden, this defense goes from an elite group to an average group, in my opinion. So to me, I just think this team is one or two injuries away from being not that good. Whereas I look at the Rams, I think that that's a team that even if Aaron Donald goes down, I think that their defense, while it is not top of the league, it's still a decent group full of underrated players. I'm going to
Hmm.
go with the under on the Niners.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's move into the Seahawks then, because this is a team I'm going to take the over on. Um, Kind of for what I just said, I think that you look at them on paper, they're not the sexiest team, but I saw a defense that got a lot better. A defense that still has a lot of potential. Obviously, their draft wasn't anything crazy, but you have a new offensive coordinator who hopefully will, in the second half of the year, not completely take away the offense, right? Because that's been kind of the curse of the Seahawks is that their offense in the second half of the season has been so bad. I think partly because you have guys like Chris Carson who have never really been able to stay healthy and stay consistent towards the end of the season.
Hmm.
And I mean, you can just look at week one against the Falcons, how good Chris Carson was for that offense and how they were clicking and being able to be a threat multiple ways. And then at the end of the year, it's like, okay, Russell Wilson, just go carry us. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
but dude, we saw this. This is a team that was able to get a winning record with one of the worst defenses we've ever seen. I don't think that's going to happen again. It didn't happen at the end of last year. Um, I doubt it's going to happen again this year. They have the talent. You have the coaching staff. I think this is a team that's going to be a much more complete team throughout the season next year. And man, in a 17 game season with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who I think we're going to go into our top 10 quarterbacks later in the episode, but I think he's both in our top 5, definitely both in our top
Oh,
6.
easily.
I get a guy like that to win 10 games. I'll gladly bet on that.
Yeah, this one's tough for me because, like you, I was choosing between the 49ers and the Seahawks, and I'm going against all history right here because I know Russ has probably hit the over on every single season he's been the starting quarterback for the Seahawks, but I'm gonna take the under. I'm not really sold on, they had the little distraction where Russ was very upset in the offseason. He wants the Seahawks to do a little more for him, which, he has all right to say that because I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. Every end of the season, it seems like since the last like 3 or 4 years, it's like, hey, Russ, go into MVP form and win us this ball game. We want to talk about the secondary. Is it going to be as bad as it was last year? No, I think it's really tough to be that bad because like they were like historically one of the worst. But you do lose Shaquille Griffin, and that was your number one corner. I'm pretty sure. So I really don't know all the pieces they're going to have on their defensive side of the ball. So I'm still not going to buy into it. I love Pete Carroll as a coach, and I'm a huge Russ guy, but I'm going to go against the Tide here, and I'm going to take the under on the Seahawks.
Oh, come on, dude. You can't act like Shaquille Griffin is a huge loss when you've been crap talking him basically ever since the podcast starting, saying that you would not start him as a corner and you would
No,
get
that was
rid of him
their other
instantly.
corner, Flowers.
Oh yeah, never mind. Okay, yeah, never mind.
Oh,
I don't
dude, no.
know.
If Flowers was the one gone and Griffin was there, I'd take the over. Like,
The thing is too is that I think that the addition of Gerald Everett at tight end is a nice little underrated pickup. You keep Chris Carson around. Like they obviously they didn't have the sexiest offseason in the world, but you get Carlos Dunlap still back as a
yeah,
pass
and he was
rusher.
really good for him when they traded for him last year.
I don't know. I just think I look at the Seahawks and I see a team of a lot of underrated players and a team that I think that they can really compete. I think that this is a team that really doesn't get the respect that it deserves. So let's go on to our last team, the Arizona Cardinals. This is a team I know you like a lot, Steed. I actually did an analysis on them earlier in the offseason. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to take the under. The over-under for the Cardinals is at 8 wins. It's
8.
only 8 wins. And I know it's going to be crazy to hear me say, oh, well, I'm going to easily take the under. I think the biggest reason I'm taking the under is this. This was a team that last year, contrary to popular belief, because they have guys like D-Hop and Kyler Murray, was a defensively led football team. The defense was the reason they won 8 games last year, not the offense, even though a lot of their flashy, big-name players are on the offensive side of the football. And the problem that I have is that they lost both of their corners last year, both of their stud corners. Their secondary was really good. Like, their secondary made a ton of plays last year. You know, they add J.J. Watt. You still have Chandler Jones. You draft Zaven Collins. You bring in Malcolm Butler. You still have Budda Baker, who's one of my favorite safeties in the league. We're actually going to talk about safeties later in the episode as well. But the thing is, I look at this division. I think that they have the worst coach in the division.
Yeah.
I still think that their defense is good, but I don't think it's better than the Niners or the Rams. So you have a bottom half of the division defense. Offensively, I still think you have a bottom half of the division offense too. I'll take the Rams offense. And I think one of the Niners or Seahawks offense is just maybe not necessarily it's better in terms of talent. I just think it's more consistent. Like, God, Steed, if you needed to win one football game, what offense are you taking? The Seahawks or the Cardinals? If you had to win a playoff game.
I mean, I'm taking Russ. But that's
it's because it's Russ. I think I'm on the same boat though. Like, I don't think the Cardinals are bad. And I think they could easily hit the over. I just don't trust this organization. I think that that's more of the problem.
Yeah. For me, I'm taking the over. I am a huge Kyler Murray guy, and I said last year I thought that team would take, the playoff step, and for a little bit it looked like they were. At one point they were first in the division at 6-3 or something like that, and really fell off at the end. And maybe that had to do with, Cliff Kingsbury still being a young coach and them just kind of having a young team. But I don't know, because I'm not betting on this team to win the division or even really make the playoffs. But 8 wins to just take a little step forward from where you were at last year, I'll take the over on that. I think you'll see Kyler Murray back in the MVP conversation easily. I know
maybe I'll take the over, dude. I think you might have convinced me.
Because you're not betting on them win division, you're just betting on them win 9 games with 17. And
it was 17.
This team is making turns, and Isaiah Simmons didn't truly play his number 8 pick. If he comes in here and is a beast next year, that helps that defense tremendously out with Zaven Collins, and we said it with JJ and Chandler Jones. You got Malcolm Butler. They traded for Rodney Hudson. That's a huge piece on that O-line that, has really struggled to run the ball. He could help them out tremendously in that, and also just help out Kyler with playing time. And you get maybe more of a motivated AJ Green.
Yeah.
like to make a play or two here. I'm not saying it's because if it was anyone else than Cliff Kingsbury, I would honestly think this team would have a decently shot at the division. But you're right. He is the worst coach in this division by a long shot. But I do like them to take a step forward this year and at least hit the over.
Yeah, it's priced in them being the worst team with the worst coach. The one thing that I'm looking at it that may have convinced me, I'm actually going to switch it to the over, is
There we
Vance
go.
Joseph, their defensive coordinator. I just remember back to the film that I watched in this team. I personally think that Vance Joseph does not get the respect that he deserves from the national media. I kind of thought that used to be a guy like Todd Bowles. He was a
Yeah.
dude that I mean, we had talked about it last year, and we had talked personally before the pod that when he got fired, I was like, dude, it's a guy that kind of deserves to be a head coach, but because if he was the same level of defensive coordinator as offensive coordinator, if he just was an offensive coordinator that was sick, he would be a head coach because that's just kind of what owners and general managers want to have nowadays. They want to have the flashy offensive coordinator. It's going to put up points. It's kind of the direction the league has been heading in. Vance Joseph, though, is a dude that schematically is just really good. And he's so good that he, as a coach, wins plays consistently. I think especially on third downs. This guy's schemes, the trap coverages that he calls, it's just really good. And you see it time and time and time again. Yeah, I'm gonna take this team to win 9 games. 17 games. This team should win 9 games. I think at the end of the day, they should win 9 games.
When also you look at them and when they play these divisional games, it's the Rams that own them, right? They haven't beat the Rams in how long?
The Rams.
But even when the 49ers were really good, they played the 49ers tough, and they beat them last year twice, swept them. And the Seahawks Cardinals games are always pretty damn good too. You had that good Sunday night football game, and then the Thursday night game came along and they lost, but it was still a decent game. I like how they shape up against, at least the 49ers and Seahawks. The Rams are kind of star-studded, so you probably drop 2 there. But at the end of the day, you're getting that last place in the standings or third place schedule, and I think that fares well for the Cardinals.
Yeah. The one problem spot I have with their offense, I think their guards just kind of suck. I think that's the big problem because I had a problem with their guard play on film, and they really haven't addressed that area of their football team. Obviously, the front 3 I thought sucked, but they pick up Rodney Hudson, who I think is one of the better centers in the league. You already mentioned that, who should make a big difference, but I'm still not sold on their guards, which I think could be an area of concern. But 9 games, this team should win 9 games, man. Especially if Kyler takes the next step.
If they don't win 9 games, wouldn't Cliff Kingsbury have to be on the hot seat? I mean, obviously,
Definitely.
If they go out there and go 2-15 or something like that, he's probably gone. But if you finish 7-10 or you finish 8-9, I think he easily deserves to be on the hot seat because you're underperforming and you have the quarterback. You have a top 10 quarterback. You should be in the running for this.
All right, let's move on. 12-team college football playoff expansion is apparently in the works. This is something that we have kind of been advocating for a while. I feel like, you were telling me before the pod that there's a lot of people that aren't in favor of this. To be honest, I personally have not met a whole lot of people that are against having more teams in the running for the national championship and in the college football playoff. I think you have to look no further than last season. You could look at basically any season. That 4 spot in the college football playoff has been such a problem spot for so long. And it feels like almost every single year, not every single year, but like half the years, you can make a great argument that the committee made the wrong choice. You have to look back, but Dude, I'm sorry. Last season, I felt like there was a good 3 to 4 teams that were better than Notre Dame. Even though
I
Notre
think
Dame,
A&M was better than Notre Dame.
yeah, A&M is one of them, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah, Notre Dame deserved the 4 spot. I'm not saying that they didn't deserve it, right? They beat Clemson. Yeah, it was without Trevor Lawrence, but still, you beat Clemson, right? And you had a great resume. They deserve to be the 4 spot. But you can't tell me that a team like A&M didn't deserve a shot to beat them. That a team like
Exactly.
even Cincinnati, Georgia, North Carolina, you
Indiana.
cannot tell me, Indiana, you cannot tell me that those teams would not have had a great shot to beat that Notre Dame football team. You can't
I would.
there's no way you can convince me. And now you get rid of that. So real quick before you go, Steed, I love this. I think that the expansion is great because what it does for me is it takes the ambiguity out of, oh, who's the 4th, 5th, and 6th best team, who you're never really going to be able to know. I think all those teams deserve a shot. And you place the ambiguity on the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th best teams that truly have major blemishes on their resume. I think that that is the biggest change and why the change makes the most amount of sense. Let's exclude teams that deserve to be excluded. Let's not exclude teams that deserve a chance.
Yeah, I agree. And to what I've seen, where I see people that do not like it, and their main argument on it is that it's only it's unfair to Alabama and Clemson because you're just wasting their time because they're going to win at the end of the day. You know why they're always going to be in that conversation is because they had the pedigree of making the playoffs here, since the playoff even started. So if you get these other schools into the mix, I think it helps their recruiting out tremendously. It's like,
100%.
hey man, we made the playoffs last year as a 6 seed. We beat our matchup. We beat Indiana in our bowl game and gave Alabama a run for our money. Like, you can build something on top of that. I just also, whenever I'm watching the selection show, and who the top 3 seeds are, right? It's the SEC winner, it's the ACC, and then it's Big Ten, and then it's either from the 4 seeds, Notre Dame, Big 12, or Pac-12 hasn't been in there a while, but
it's basically the second SEC team, right?
Yeah, or the second SEC team. I think this puts a lot of people in the running. And another reason why I really love it is because, you can get off to a rough start, but that doesn't tell you really how great your team is. Look at a team like Oklahoma. You go under this quarterback change with Spencer Rattler. We all know had the talent come in. He struggles a little bit. He's a young kid. But once him and Lincoln Riley figured it out and they started playing better defense, they were one of the hottest teams in the league. I know they had 2 losses, but I could put them up there with A&M deserving a 4 spot. Now you put them into the mix against one of these teams, and they can go make a run. We look at all the other college sports out there, whether it be March Madness or college baseball, and they have this bigger playoff format. You see other teams that shouldn't make it. Look at college basketball. UCLA went for first 4 in to the Final Four, okay, and literally 2 seconds away to go in the national championship. I know it's football, and it's that's a little tougher, but we saw Indiana play Ohio State really tough last year, really tough, and they deserve a chance at this thing. We saw Cincinnati be, honestly, on paper, one of the best teams on offense and defense, just based off efficiency. They deserve a shot. And people could say, well, they lost to Georgia anyways. The game would have went different. Okay, they had the game won, and then they just tried to bag it in there with that huge play. Corner made a good play on the ball. Okay, it probably doesn't happen if it's a college football playoff format.
Regardless if it does or if it doesn't, that Cincinnati team clearly could play. They almost beat
easily.
Georgia, right? They should have beat Georgia. They controlled that football game. You're telling me that team didn't deserve a chance? If you're saying that Georgia deserves a chance, why not Cincinnati? No, I think this would be a great change. I really like the point that you made because I was going to bring the same thing up. You can look at the NFL every year, right? First half of the season is a bait. It's all about the second half of the season. Who's hot come playoff time? Dude, you can look at the first half of the season and The Seahawks, I think, are a great example. Seahawks first
Oh
half
yeah,
of the season.
Seahawks look like they're going to win the Super Bowl, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it
the
looked like they're going to win
Raiders.
it.
All of a
The
sudden, that
Raiders
team
look like I
falls
was like,
off.
but then look at like the Bucks, right? Underperforming,
Yeah.
7-5. A lot of people thought they were better. Oh, okay, let me go win 4 in a row and just never lose again. Never after that Chiefs game, it was a complete flip switch. And you compare that to a team like Oklahoma. After they took that L to Kansas State, it was a flip switch, and they weren't the same team after that.
Yeah, and the current system that is in college football, it's about everything. If you have, God forbid, you have a bad week 1 loss, first game of the season, and after that, or maybe week 2, right? You just don't show up. You're overconfident. You don't show up. God forbid you have one little thing go wrong. Oh, you're not allowed to come back from that. Apparently, you're not allowed
Yeah.
to. The only way you
But
can is if you're in the SEC. That's the only way you can come back from
yeah.
that. If you do that in the Pac-12, you're done. You do that in the ACC, you're done.
Let me put this. Hold on, you go ahead and finish.
Well, yeah, that happened to Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden, Oklahoma, who you were arguing is a top 4 team, come the end of the season, they're the hottest team in college football, or at least one of the hottest, and they probably deserve a chance. They're automatically out because of something that happened in the very beginning of the season, where you look at where they are at the end compared to the beginning, completely different football teams, and they're for some reason punished for that. That's not a system that I find fair, entertaining.
It's not.
Whatever. It just kind of goes against all of sports. The whole, you get knocked down, get back up, a whole core of football. Well, we have a system that goes completely against that philosophy, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, because I'll make 2 points. Because the first point is, think about like a Georgia team this year. They actually have to play someone out of conference for a change for this program. First time I think in a while. They never do this, but yeah, you got to kick off with Clemson. That's going to be 2v3 week 1. But let's say Georgia loses that game. You win out. You're 11-1. Clemson wins out. Alabama goes undefeated. You got to play Bama in the SEC championship. You lose. You finish the season 11-2. Okay, like you had two losses against top 4 teams, and you're not going to make it because Notre Dame teams are going to either be 12-0 or Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship at 12-1. So you can't, if you were in those ball games too for Georgia, you think you deserve a shot at it because if you lose by a field goal or something, you're like, dude, on any given day we could beat that team. We just need another shot. I think it opens up that kind of possibility as well. My second point is, I think the college football playoff has really been a fail to this point. Mostly because, you look for memorable games, right? First college football playoff was great. You had Ohio State versus Alabama in the first round. Crazy game. Cardell Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, and Urban Meyer coming back and beating Bama. And then ultimately beating Marcus Mariota and Oregon in the Natty, and that was a great game too. And then, the Clemson versus Bama national championships, there were some really good ones in there where I know Bama won by 2 scores, but Deshaun throwing for 400. But the next year, the Hunter Renfrow last second touchdown catch, that was a good one. You got it right there. But now you open up the possibilities of just better ball, better games. Because, I will say the 1 and 2 usually being Bama or Clemson, they are separate. In Ohio State, they're on their different tier. They are separated from the field. But if it's an 8-9 matchup, a 6 through 10 ranked team is not tremendously different. You're going to get some really good games, and people will say, well, why don't we see these? Because they get the New Year's Six Bowl. Why don't we see it in the New Year's Six? Just because you got people sitting out. The game doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
The game does not mean anything. Now you put in a college football format, a playoff format, now they care. And I'm telling you, a 6-ranked team and a 10-ranked team are not that different. They are not that different at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to make the argument, well, what is the college football playoff ever since it's been implemented impacted the most? Well, it's impacted those New Year's Six Bowls in terms of they don't matter at all now. Who cares? Oh, that's a consolation prize. Oh, well, you missed out on the top 4. Here's a New Year's. We don't care. We don't care at all. Everyone's sitting out. Obviously, the teams want to win it, and especially, when you look at a team like Cincinnati, that bowl game, that meant a lot to that program.
That cares for those teams. It cares for a Cincinnati or a Coastal or even Iowa State, who's never been in. Like, you won a Big 12 and you're finally playing a huge bowl, first time in program history, means something for them. But Georgia playing in their 12th Sugar Bowl in the last 15 years, they don't give a hell.
Yeah, it's a consolation prize to them.
They're like, what are we doing? Oklahoma's like, well, okay, like, I mean, they beat the brakes off of Florida, but you think Florida cares? Florida played Alabama's toughest game was against Florida because Florida had the offense to keep up with Alabama and score, right? But after you lose that game and you're like, well, we're out now, so it doesn't really doesn't matter. You get all these players sit out and you kind of like the season's over. Like, why should we show up for another game? Like, bragging rights? Like, cool, man, you beat us in a bowl that doesn't mean anything. It just brings another trophy to the program,
Yeah, so why are we keeping in these, at least in my opinion, meaningless bowl games? It depends on the program, whether it means something, because we just went over it. Okay, you're a small program, first time, yeah, yada, 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 yada. But let's give them a chance. Let's if you really want them to mean something, let's give them a chance. And
do we I think we especially in college football, we have gotten away from what makes sports so great, and it's the underdog.
The underdog story.
Underdogs, and that's what makes March Madness so great, and college baseball playoffs so great. Because Coastal, when they won the college baseball, I mean, you came out of nowhere, you won the whole thing. That's crazy. You had to play 70 games. Basketball, Loyola Chicago making the Final Four. That's a great run. And now in football, if you expand it, a team like Indiana, who played Ohio State so tough and really ran through the Big Ten besides them, you win a playoff game as an underdog. You come in the game, you got a little fire in your step. Anything can happen. I'm telling you right now, the Indiana team had to shoe it up against that Clemson team. It's a better game than people would think.
Or Iowa State. I mean, you look at all these teams, BYU, right? Coastal. You can make the argument, oh, well, they're so far off these top programs. They got plenty of NFL players on these teams, right? You can list off a bunch of players that get drafted off of these football teams. North Carolina, Texas A&M.
I'm not taking anything away from Alabama and Clemson because they get the recruits and they develop them into 50% of the league is probably Clemson, Alabama players. I mean, not that drastic, but
Ohio State in there.
In Ohio State, it's a good chunk. But these smaller teams that have been relevant for a little bit or becoming into relevancy have good players, and it's strictly because they take these 3 stars and develop them. And now if you put them into a playoff format, they can get these better recruits and make them really even come into fruition as a better team.
Yeah. No, I just think it'd be better. I think the last 100%. Argument I want to say is that if you think that are they saying that this 12-team playoff system would add games onto the season? I think that's one of the knocks against it. Yeah, it's
one of the knocks. I guess not for every college football player, but if you're a starter or you're a rotational guy, and you play, isn't your dream to play in the NFL? Isn't that the goal? Or was it aren't you going to have to play that many games anyways if you're just trying to get to the league? And
here's my argument. Regardless of the extra games, if you think that is against player safety, right? The whole argument is it's against player safety because you could get injured and it'll ruin your chance of making it to the NFL. Well, why, if we're worried about the players, are they not able to make money off of their brand?
Yeah, exactly.
While they're in college. Every other college kid is able to go, if I'm a finance major or an engineering major, I'm allowed to go and make a product or make a business. That's not against the policy, but God forbid an athlete that has been given a platform is able to not monetize that. If you're worried about their career path, well, that's the biggest roadblock to them, probably more so than them getting injured on the football field. The fact that they're not able to strike while the iron is hot.
Exactly.
So I just think that if you're worried about player safety, well, you're kind of contradicting yourself because obviously that's an issue that's being resolved in a lot of places. Like I know Georgia, and I think it's already happened in California, and I know other states are like Nevada, I think is one of them that's already, or maybe it's New Mexico, not Nevada. There's a couple of them that are allowing it now, but that's my whole argument is that if you're worried about player safety and especially player safety in terms of it's going to ruin their potential career prospects, there are already more major roadblocks implemented in the NCAA that if you're so worried about it, why have you not been advocating hard against it, right? So, all right, enough of the college football expansion. We both heavily agree with it. Let's move on. You want to do top 10 quarterbacks or top 10 safeties first? What are you thinking?
You want to rip the quarterbacks?
Let's do it. Me and Steed, let's just go like one for one, right? We did this last year. We thought it was fun. We're going to do it again this year. Top 10 quarterbacks for this season. This isn't from like a franchise perspective. Maybe we'll come back in a future episode from like a franchise. This is for next year alone. Number 1, Mahomes, right? Mahomes.
Yeah. No, actually, Josh Allen. Yeah, no, Mahomes.
All right.
Easily Mahomes.
Number 1 for both of us, Mahomes. Not much of a discussion there. If you've ever watched Mahomes play, that kind of is the whole argument. Number 2 for me is Brady. Do you also have Brady?
I had Aaron Rodgers.
No way.
I'm not gonna, dude. I don't like the Packers, but I can't I gotta speak true here. Rodgers' season last year was crazy, and I understand Brady beat him at the end, but
he's
Rodgers'
disgusting.
Season, it was so good, and I think you think about the value of both here. We're talking about we're talking about the GOAT, and we're talking probably besides Patrick Mahomes, one of the best, athletically gifted quarterbacks of all time, and when Brady went on the move, Bucks automatically super contender. And now with Rodgers on the move, the Packers go from a Super Bowl contender to probably not making the playoffs, and to Rodgers, whoever he goes to, a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So I value those guys the same, but just based off his playing last year, I'm going to put him at 2.
Honestly, I don't disagree with that at all. I have Rodgers at 3, so I guess I just want to touch on Rodgers really quickly in terms of just how good he is. Okay, so we just flip-flop that.
Yeah.
Watching Aaron Rodgers, I think it was the second time they played the Bears. Was that the primetime game? There was a primetime game last season, Bears-Packers, where
that might have been the first time.
Maybe it was the first time because that Bears defense was good last year. That was a well-coached group, very talented, good players all throughout, right? It was the reason that team made the playoffs for a large part. I mean, the offense got hot second half of the season, but for a large part of the season, that was why they were still hanging around. Mm-hmm. Watching Aaron Rodgers just completely carve up a well-coached, talented defense with ease is just really cements why he is so good, right? He's able to get through reads, 4 reads like that. There's a play in the red zone where he gets to his 5th option. It's a little drag across the middle. Under pressure, he has 3 seconds to throw. He systematically gets through every single guy, processes insanely quick, little dump off for a touchdown. It's dude, he just does that kind of stuff regularly, which is incredible to see.
Yeah, and also Rodgers never getting the chance for that touchdown, a 4th down. What was it, 6 yards to go?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I think that's when Matt LaFleur, you got to grow some balls, man. Just put it all on the line. Just say, hey, I got the MVP. I got the hottest quarterback in the game. We got 6 yards. I'm putting the ball in your hand. I'm not putting the ball back in
the GOAT's hands.
Yeah, that just makes no sense to me. So
we kind of tore into that on a previous episode.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Number 4 for me, Russell Wilson. Okay, all right. So we agree here. Wow, we're agreeing a lot on this list. Again, we're going to disagree a lot come to safety.
I think we'll agree on the quarterbacks. The safeties, I think you and me just kind of value that position a little differently. I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. Me and you, we both love Russell Wilson. Honestly, having him at 4 feels kind of like a diss to Russell Wilson to a certain extent because
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had 3 last year, maybe.
like I think that you can make the argument that he's above some of the guys ahead of him. It's just hard to put him there.
This
I
stuff.
love Russell Wilson. I think that Russell Wilson is just so slept on. Even having him at 4 for me is I feel like sleeping on him. But
Well,
this
like
dude is
put it in
truly incredible.
perspective like this. Like those 3 guys above him have won MVPs, like have gotten MVP votes, and it's no knock on Russ. Like I still don't understand how he's not even got a single MVP vote, but like that's just kind of how I also look at the top 3 a little bit here. But also, like if I need to win a game, I'll call you up, Russ.
And he's just ridiculous. You're never out of a game when you have Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to number 5. Number 5 for me, Josh Allen. Is it for you too? Okay.
Yeah,
so
Josh
we've only
Allen.
disagreed on Brady and Rodgers.
Yeah, his here's a year last year, like taking that extra, he took the next step, like he went from being kind of like, oh, this inaccurate kind of guy, but like you could see the talent until last year, like the year before when they made the playoffs and like he grew up a little bit. Then they're like, okay, like we think we know what we have here, so let's go out here and get him a studded receiver in Stephon Diggs, and like just literally tore up the league.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it again. I've said it so many times. I think that Josh Allen's rawness was really like overstated by a lot of people. Yes, he was raw, but people act like he made this super insane. He's a completely different player. Like, no, you just kind of honed it in a little bit. You fine-tuned a little bit of aspects of his game. I really don't think he was as inaccurate as advertised. He doesn't have the numbers, but constantly Josh Allen has been asked to do a lot more than a lot of other quarterbacks have been asked to do in terms of the throws that they ask him to make, which kind of like, I mean, you saw it last year, it helped him out. It helped his numbers out a lot, but it kind of hindered him a little bit to a certain extent beforehand. So I've always really liked Josh Allen. No surprise to see him up there once you fine tune a lot of aspects of his game. Number 6 for me, I have Dak Prescott.
Dude, I thought you were gonna go Lamar there. I have Dak Prescott too. I had such an argument already in my head that I was going to like defend Dak.
I like Dak. I mean, listen, I may have been critical. This is before the podcast. May have been critical of Dak here and there, but the dude's really good. He's just a winner.
He's on pace for 5,000 yards last year.
To a certain extent, he's like that Russell Wilson, where if you have Dak Prescott on the field, you can win a football game. I don't think he's just as good as Russell Wilson in that, but he's definitely in a similar tier where it's like, dude, I need a quarterback to win a game. There's really not that many guys that I'm taking over Dak Prescott. But I think that Dak Prescott here at number 6, we start to get into that second tier of quarterbacks. I think we've definitely bridged the first tier. You have anything else you want to say? You had a whole argument made up.
I just think it's kind of crazy how like I think Dak is still kind of like undervalued in the community, but he's like making what, 40 million. Like it's just kind of crazy. I just always love like kind of Dak's game. Like whenever I watch quarterbacks, and of course like I've seen a lot of Cowboys games because you turn in every Sunday night they're playing, but there's a confidence in Dak where like I'm like, okay, like it's kind of like the same Russ vibe, like you were saying, I feel like we can win this game because I think we have the better quarterback at the end of the day. And, with his weapons, he's truly blessed with, Gallup, Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. And I really like him next year to tear it up. But like I said, he was on pace for like over 5,000 yards. I mean, think about how bad their defense was in like when he was playing last year. Like that Atlanta game, they were down 15 with 5 minutes left, came back and won. Like, just put up some crazy numbers. Expect that for Dak this year as well.
Yeah, I think the last thing with Dak that people don't – maybe they just don't dive in deep enough, maybe because he's on the Cowboys or whatever. I think the big problem with Dak is that he's not an inaccurate quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. He has great accuracy numbers. He's relatively consistent. But as a pure thrower of the football, there were times where he would be inaccurate on throws that you would really expect him to complete. I think part of that is, it kind of all comes full circle, right? There's a reason he was not a first round pick. And it's because at times he just missed throws, right? His mechanics would kind of let him down here and there. I think at the beginning of last year, you really saw, we talk about Josh Allen fine tuning things. People don't want to mention that Dak really fine tuned that aspect of his game. And you found him truly to believe in his arm. And he was truly accurate and consistent the entire game. You wouldn't have those handful of throws or that drive here and there where he would miss throws, right? It was full on. Okay, Dak locked and loaded the entire game. He's making throws, and he has full confidence the whole nine. We finally saw that before he got injured, and I can only expect to see that again. Number 7.
Yeah, and he's just beast.
Yeah, he's good. Number 7, Lamar Jackson. Action Jackson. Do you also have Lamar at number 7?
Yeah. I truly thought you were going to go Lamar at 6, and you were going to go Dak at 7. And I was going to fight for Dak.
No. Lamar at 7. To me, I think that Lamar's perceived issues as a passer are extremely overstated. I thought part of the issue for Lamar last year, there was 2 things. One was a lack of true talent on the outside at the receiver position.
Have that now.
Yeah, like you look at it, right? Like outside of Mark Andrews, your main options, you had Willie Snead and Miles Boykin, and I like Hollywood Brown, so I'm not really going to include him. But you compare that to like other teams' number 2 and number 3 receivers, you could look no further than just in their division, right? Like the Steelers have Claypool, Deontay, and Juju as their like plethora of guys. Even the Bengals had T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and it's like, the Browns even. You have Odell and Jarvis Landry, on top of a whole slew of tight ends. Whereas, what has Lamar got? He's left kind of holding the bag and left, okay, Lamar, just go run around and win his football games. God forbid we're behind. Finally, they invest in some receivers. So we should see Lamar as a passer go back to what he was, kind of that MVP year. He's an incredibly accurate quarterback. The only reason I have him as low as 7 is I think that the big issue he does have as a passer is that on driven throws down the field, his arm talent in general lets him down. He's deadly accurate, and he is one of the best touch throw passers in the NFL, but there are some throws that he simply is not able to make, which I think limits him. Now, he makes up for that as a runner, but I think that's the reason I have him at number 7 and not possibly higher.
Yeah, one reason why I have him at 7 and I couldn't bridge him any better is I like when I look at quarterbacks, I look at playoff success alongside their capability, and you really just you get that first win this year. That Bills game is tough. Like the Bills were a hot team, but you're 1-3 in the playoffs, and you're just completing 50% of your passes. To me, that's not getting the job done. I hate to say it because I think Lamar gets a little bit of pass, but I'm just returning the favor because I remember when Matt Ryan would get hated on when he was young too, and he couldn't win the playoffs, and everybody was like, "Oh, well, he can't be a top 10 quarterback." I'm just kind of returning the favor here for Lamar, but I'd like to see him get a little better. And I think it had to do with their. I think teams are really able to lock into how to control Lamar, especially in his running game during the playoffs, and especially them not having those weapons on the outside last year really tainted their success to make a long run, because they could have if they had just a couple more key players on that offense. But now you invested into that. Maybe Lamar takes that extra step again, because he didn't fall back a whole lot from his MVP year. You got to think his MVP year was crazy. I mean, Ravens were studded. They were 14-2, but it's not like he dropped back at tremendous.
I mean, second half of the season, you basically saw MVP
again,
Lamar
another
back.
team a team that was 7-5, in this AFC where you had to go 11-5 just to have a shot at the playoffs this year. You had to win 4 games to get, especially one of those games being that Browns game where,
crazy football game.
100 points total scored in that game, and he's a big reason why if they don't win that game, they're out. So yeah, I mean, his playoffs. Now I kind of want to take it back because like truly his playoffs started when he was 7-5 and he delivered. But
I don't really.
It is what it is.
The one thing I don't really take into account that playoff thing you mentioned. Maybe I think is a little contextual. Thing is that if Lamar Jackson doesn't throw that red zone interception against the Bills, I think that they could go on to win that football game.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a completely different story, right? If you like, how many times did they get in the red zone, score a touchdown out of it? And of course, the first time in like forever is a pick six.
It was like his first red zone interception, ever. It just happens. That's football, man. Like at the end of the day, in these big games, 1 or 2 plays. So.
But, you're right. If he does score there, I mean, then it's like, what, a 10-7 game, and then anything can happen.
So, yeah, obviously part of that game is on Lamar. And that's his fault for throwing the interception. But I'm not going to – the Ravens have been in all these playoff games. It's not like these haven't been close, tightly contested games. He could have done a little more, but I'm not going to completely hold that against him. The last thing, I think that some of the blame needs to be put on Greg Roman to a certain extent, and that –
yeah,
I looked at the Ravens on film, and it's like, can we get a little more in the passing game? Can we get a little bit more? Because listen, at the NFL, this is a tightly contested league, and if we're going to compare Greg Roman to the truly great offensive coordinators, I do feel like you're getting a little bit of slack last year compared to what it could have been. I always compare everyone to Sean Payton just because I think that Sean Payton, as a play caller, as a designer of plays, probably my favorite guy to watch. I feel like if you had Sean Payton as the offensive coordinator of the Ravens last year, they don't miss a beat, and they are that 14-2 team. So I think that's some of the blame does need to be put on the play caller, and it was last year by Lamar. But let's move on. Number 8 for me, this may come as a little bit of surprise. Maybe I'm taking the bait because of the change of scenery and all. Matthew Stafford for me at number 8. I've always been a huge Stafford guy. I don't care if I'm taking the bait or not. I really do feel like we're going to see Matthew Stafford truly explode and be that quarterback that everyone knows he is, but he's just been cooped up on the lines. He's been caged. Matt Stafford, when you look at his film, yeah, he has a little bit of inconsistency here and there, but my God, the crazy stuff that you see is just absolutely insane. Everyone wants to point at these crazy Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes plays, and Matt Stafford's been doing this year in and year out. He has plays that he delivers high level, tough plays, but at a coach's tape level, right? Where you want to point at an example of a guy to be. It's Matthew Stafford on a lot of these really difficult concepts. So I'm going to have him at number 8, and hate on me all you want. I believe in Matthew Stafford.
At 8, I put Kyler Murray. You turn on look at players' highlight reels like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. You could turn on Kyler Murray's highlight reels, and he's right up there with them. This dude is a crazy talent, makes a lot of plays. The Cardinals have not really had tremendous success. He's only 13-8-1 as a starter, but they weren't. This is a team that was was picking him number 1 overall 2 years ago. He made improvements last year, and also I'm going to tell you, I think Cliff Kingsbury's holding him a little more back than people are giving him credit. I think he would honestly been he was an MVP candidate after that Seahawks game Sunday night, but kind of fell off. I think, if Cliff Kingsbury figures it out at the next level, or if it's not him, you could really see him jump to that next elite level.
All right, number 9, I've got Kyler for a lot of the reasons you said. I think that we just do need to see him put it together. I think COVID definitely hurt him a little bit compared to a lot of the other players. And over the course of last season, we saw Kyler Murray improve, which I think is a big thing. Yes. So year 3, let's see if he can take the next step. And if he can, I could easily see him going a lot higher than 9 on my list. Number 10 for me. Oh, wait, did you do your number 9?
No, my 9 is Matthew Stafford, though. So
okay.
We just kind of
number 10, I've got Justin Herbert. Maybe it's a little too reactionary. There are a lot of guys that I think have a legit shot at this number 10 spot. Baker Mayfield. Maybe this is a little homerism coming, but I still think that Ben Roethlisberger is playing at a pretty elite level and doesn't get the credit he deserves. Ryan Tannehill, I think, definitely deserves a
Tannehill
shout.
definitely deserves to be in this conversation.
But I'm going to go with Herbert just because I think that, you felt like you got a veteran as a rookie last year. The whole talent argument, like the dude can make all the throws. And on top of that, like that Chargers offensive line was definitely a problem spot last year. And he was under pressure a whole lot and was able to make plays. So
they got a whole lot better.
Yeah, Justin Herbert for me, I'm going to put it number 10. There's definitely an argument to be higher. And if we were doing this from like a starting franchise perspective, he's definitely going higher than 10. But for next year, it's tough. Like if I'm true win now, it's tough to put a second year guy at higher than a lot of these more proven pedigreed guys. Maybe Matt Ryan, I think maybe could be in this conversation too.
I thought about that for a second, but I couldn't be too much homer.
I can't put him in there. I think he's more like a 15, 16 kind of guy. All right, who's your number 10 though?
I was between three guys. It was Tannehill, Herbert, and Baker, and I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is in my top 10 quarterback. I'm keeping Baker in here. I'm a huge Baker fan, and you saw him his great rookie year to the sophomore slump. But once he got the coach and you put the weapons around him, this dude you see just the talent and the poise he does have as a quarterback, and to take the Browns 11-5 as the starting quarterback, that's no easy task. And, you did it. So I got to throw him in the top 10. I have to. And I expect big things out of him. He's got the team to win. And I think he's playing with a lot more confidence now that he's figured out this offense. And I like his progression moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, the last year, if you look at the second half of the season, the top three guys were easily Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill. They were the hottest quarterbacks at the end of the year last year, and they led those teams to the playoffs. So I agree that Baker Mayfield definitely should get top 10 consideration. You look at the tape at the end of last year, he was playing like it. He was playing like that number 1 overall pick he was drafted to be, and that Baker Mayfield we saw rookie year. And I got to give you the shout out because you kind of called it saying, hey, Stefanski is the perfect offensive coordinator for him. You bought into the Browns, and I'm no surprise to see your boy Baker at the number 10 spot right now.
Well, I mean, they're Super Bowl champions this year too, so I got to put my Super Bowl quarterback up there.
All right, let's move into the last segment of the day. It's going to be kind of like a reaction sort of a thing. We're going to debate it a little bit. So we're not going to necessarily have our top 10 list. We're going to be reacting to a different top 10 list. It's going to be the top 10 safeties in the league. And we are going to be reacting to the Pro Football Focus top 10 safeties in the league because this is something that me and Steve were arguing over a little bit while we were talking about what we were going to say on the pod. So let's just get into it. Let me pull it up. For those watching on the tube, I'll bring up their list on the screen. I'll link to it in the description to the guys at Pro Football Focus. They do a lot of good work and a lot of cool stuff. So obviously, if you're checking out our pod, you probably know about them. But for some reason, if you live under a rock, they got a lot of good content. So go check them out. So this is from, I think it's from June, June 1st. So I think they updated this list slightly. But regardless, their top 10, I believe, is still exactly the same. So at number 1, they have Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos. He's now the highest paid safety. I agree. I think Justin Simmons is a top 3 guy. No complaints from me there.
I put him in my top 3. I still I'm just so set that Derwin James is the best safety in the league.
I think part of their thing is that, so they said on here, had it not been for injury,
they're going off of him being hurt, Yeah, I think he would be number 1 if he wasn't hurt.
They do have a little bit of that in there. So I guess we can for those listening, I'll run through their top 10 real quick. It's Justin Simmons from the Broncos at number 1, Harrison Smith and the Vikings number 2, John Johnson, former Rams, now Browns safety number 3, Marcus Williams, the Saints safety at number 4, Minkah Fitzpatrick, the Steelers safety at 5, Derwin James, who we were just talking about, the Chargers safety at number 6, Marcus May, the Jets safety at number 7, Jesse Bates, the Cincinnati Bengals free safety at number 8. Adrian Amos, the Packers safety at number 9. And Jamal Adams, the Seattle Seahawks safety at number 10. Okay, I guess we can just go through this here. Harrison Smith at number 2. I like Harrison Smith. I really don't have a huge complaint. I don't think I'd put him in my top 3, though. I really don't.
I think he would be in my top 5, but he would probably be at right at number 5 for me. I don't have a problem with them ranking him this high because he is a really good player, and there's some really good safeties. Because if you looked outside of that top 10, I mean, they got Budda Baker ranked at 16. I mean, that's a guy I think I would easily put in my top 10.
Yeah, I think that for me, Budda Baker, I actually think he's my number 1 safety in the league.
He's in my top 3. I think my top 3 would go Derwin James, Mika, and then I would go Budda in that way.
I think there's definitely a conversation because I like Derwin James a lot. I had him as a top 5 pick when he came out. So I don't disagree if you had him at number 1. I think that Minka Fitzpatrick is definitely legit. And yeah, it's a little Steelers homer coming out of me. I think he could be number 1. And obviously Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos, I think, has a good shot, and they rightfully so have him ranked number 1. But the fact that Budda Baker isn't in the top 5, isn't even in the top 10 is the biggest.
I think that's so much. I think that's just a really bad take.
Yeah, I don't see it. When I watched the Cardinals film, that's part of the reason why I just decided to say fuck it and take the over on the Cardinals, because they got that guy. Man, I'm a big Steelers fan. Troy Polamalu is my favorite player ever. I see a whole lot of resemblance in the game instinctively, just how fast they play in Budda Baker and Troy. Man, I think that Budda Baker is just an all-around stud. I don't see how he's not in the top 10. So
yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah, instead of going through the rest of the list, I'm going to kind of say guys that I would have in the top 10 over some of these other dudes. Before we get into the real, the guy that we really disagreed with on, I think that Jordan Poyer on the Buffalo Bills is definitely one of the more underrated safeties. Every time I watch the Bills, I'm always saying to myself, holy crap, that's an insane play by Jordan Poyer. He shows up every single game. To me, maybe I have him just outside of the top 10, but man, I would really think I have him in the top 10. Eddie Jackson is a guy. They have him at 23. I think that's ridiculous.
Oh man, I'm scrolling down. I'm looking. Eddie Jackson at 23. I think that's just really disrespectful.
Jeremy Chin also as the last safety, I think, is a little ridiculous. He's more of a linebacker, though.
I don't think I would have him any higher on this list, but I like how they give a shout out to Adrian Amos on the Packers, because I think he's definitely one of the more underrated safeties in the league. Because whenever I've watched Packers game and I root against them, but I can easily tell Adrian Amos is one of their most key players on this defense, besides maybe Jair Alexander. He is just such a pivotal point in that secondary and makes a lot of great plays and helps them out on that side of the ball.
Yeah, Amos is definitely really good. They picked him up from Chicago, right? They picked him up a couple of years ago. Yeah, because I had always thought that for him and Eddie Jackson together in 2018, I thought was just nasty, right? That was that insane Bears defense that year.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the fact that Eddie Jackson is so low on this list is still mind-boggling to me. They have him all the way down at 23. I mean, there's a lot of really good safeties on this list. So it's, there's going to be a couple guys that miss out. So I guess, all right, more underrated guys. Justin Reed for the Texans. I know it's the Texans and they suck, but
that's their only good player on defense.
Him, and they got that linebacker too.
Oh, and the linebacker. Yeah.
So he's pretty good too. I think he's pretty underrated. Basically any Baltimore Ravens defensive back, I think, is underrated. They have some legit ass D backs. Juan Thornhill from the Chiefs, I think, is pretty underrated. I like
they have Antoine Winfield at 21. I think I'd put him up a little higher, because especially during their when they went into that peak Super Bowl run, he played I mean, alongside Devin White, they were two big reasons of why that defense really kicked it off. I mean, he's a beast in the run game.
Yeah. Who are there? There's a safety I'm trying to think of. I can't. Kevin Byard, I think is really, really, really top tier player. I think he definitely dropped off a little bit last year. Um, I mean, the whole Titans defense kind of did, but this is a dude that's legit.
Yeah.
Bill's got some good D backs. I guess we can go into the guy that we disagree with the most, and that's Tyrann Mathieu. I truly believe that Tyrann Mathieu is a top 10 safety. They have him at 11. You do not. I want to hear why, simply because every time I watch the Chiefs on tape, we're going to put the pressure of our defense on Tyrann Mathieu to go make a play, and he comes up a whole lot. So I don't understand
He's
how
very
you have
versatile.
him outside.
He is very versatile. I'll give him that. I just think everyone in the media just hypes him up and has this fascination for him, and like it just gives him more credit than like how good of a player he is. Like, yeah, has he made some insane plays, especially in the Super Bowl or something like that in prime time? Yeah, but I think everybody takes on like just those big plays and just automatically throws it into like, oh, he's an elite safety. I think he hurts him sometimes, especially in the coverage game.
Yeah, I don't know. I have him in there. One dude that's left off of this list, because McLeod for me is a guy I think is underrated. I don't think he's necessarily like a top tier guy. I think they may consider this dude a corner, and that's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But if he's listed as a safety under PFF, because he kind of plays like a hybrid role, I kind of think of him more so as like a safety, like a I mean, they probably consider him as a nickel corner, but if they consider him a safety and have him left off of the top 32 safeties in the league, I think that that's ridiculous. Like, absolutely ridiculous. Because to me, if I'm making a team, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, not only I think is a top 10 safety, I think that there's an argument that he's a top 10 defensive back in the NFL. Every single time I watch these Saints games, it's like, dude, this guy is ridiculous. Like, dude, he not only takes your lunch, he eats it too. And then he takes your lunch money. Like, this guy is absolutely ridiculous.
That's crazy that PFF wouldn't have him in here because they tend to like Saints players because I think they follow kind of more that PFF guideline, you know?
Well, I think that they may have him listed as a corner. So I'm going to hold off my what the hell are you doing, PFF? Let's get into the guys, though, that we disagree with on the list. And the first one, this is a guy that we disagree with a lot on, is John Johnson. They have him at 3 on this list. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. He's a good player. But it's really easy to look good as a safety when you're on the team with easily the best pass rush in the NFL, or like at least top 2. And yes, you can say that that's the argument for Minkah Fitzpatrick, but if you watch the Steelers games, dude, he is the guy as the defensive back on the Steelers. Like, he's making plays left, right, and center. He wasn't even the guy on the Rams. Good player. I don't think he's top 3 though. I'm not even sure I have him top 10 for me. He might be around top 10. But I don't think he's top 5.
He's in my top 10. He's in my top 10. Maybe creeping around top 5 if I really think about it. Because you're right. I mean, Aaron Donald makes a lot of people look pretty damn good. You know, look at Leonard Floyd, look at Dante Fowler. You know, players like that, especially on the other side of the ball. But I don't know. I think John Johnson is, especially now in this Cleveland setting, and where, you know, they have a really good defense and he can he's the guy in the secondary. I'm telling you, he's really good in coverage. I really like what I see out of John Johnson, and I think he earned his contract for Cleveland, and I think he will definitely be like, he'll earn it and plus more.
Yeah, I like John Johnson. Don't get me wrong, but I'm taking Derwin James over him. I'm taking Minkah Fitzpatrick over him. I'm taking Budda Baker over him. I'll probably take Jesse Bates over him. I'm taking Justin Simmons over him. Like, I don't have him in the top. And that's guys that I can, like, guarantee. There are other dudes that I think are definitely, like, in the question. So I don't have him as a top 5 guy. The other guy, so like John Johnson, I agree he's underrated. I don't have him in my top 5 though. Another guy that kind of fits that mold that I agree with PFF that he's underrated, but I don't have him that high is Marcus May at 7 from the Jets. Good player, underrated player. I agree. And because he's on the Jets defense, he's going to be overlooked and undeservedly crapped on. I don't think he's the 7th best safety in the NFL, though. I really don't. Like, you're going to argue with me, who would I rather have? Tyrann Mathieu? I'm taking Tyrann Mathieu over him. Jamal Adams, questionable, just because it's almost who do you want? Like, because Marcus May is better in coverage.
Yeah,
Jamal Adams is just a better playmaker.
Yeah, it's like what your defense needs in those two players, But
I think I'm taking Poyer over him. I don't think Budda Baker easily.
I just still don't agree with Budda being that far down the list.
Eddie Jackson, I think, is like, man, yeah, he's been a little inconsistent, but the dude still makes plays. You got some Patriots D-backs that I think could be in there. I don't know. I think that Marcus May, for me, is in that, like, that clump of safeties that is maybe like tier 3 for me. I don't have him as, like, right now for PFF, they have him as like a tier 2 guy. I don't think I have him as a tier 2 guy. I think I have him clumped more in like the teens, the mid-teens for me.
He had a really excellent season last year, especially after trading Jamal Adams. Like, he really did shine for that trash team. And like, you could kind of just tell he was the best player on that defense, but the thing is, maybe the Jets kind of like agree with you. We don't think he is this elite level at safety because we have to see it again. Because like they didn't sign him to that big contract, and then they franchise tagged him, right?
I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it. He had a good year last year, but I'm not putting him at number 7. I think you'll be hard pressed to find GMs that put him number 7.
I would like to talk to somebody at PFF and be like, you cannot tell me that Marcus May is better than Budda Baker. Like, you can't. There's no way you can say that with a straight face.
Dude,
like,
it's just you can go down the next like 5 players. Jesse Bates. I'm easily taking Jesse Bates over Marcus May. Adrian Amos. I think I'm easily taking Amos over Marcus May.
Amos.
Jamal Adams is definitely questionable, and I think it depends on your scheme fit, but if you're talking about the role that they play on a defense, Jamal Adams as a box safety is insane. The guy against you saw it against the Falcons week 1. The dude like single-handedly stuffed the Falcons offense, like drive after drive in the red zone.
Oh yeah, it sucks.
He definitely does have his downfalls, Jamal Adams. Yeah. But for his role, he's great. Tyrann Mathieu. Yeah, he has his. I still think that Tyrann Mathieu is more dynamic. Kevin Byard, to me, if you're going off of last season, yes, Marcus May had a better season last year than Kevin Byard did. But from a GM's perspective, like, who am I taking? I still think I'm taking Kevin Byard over Marcus May. Just like if we had to pick between the two players. The Bills safeties, like I think I'm taking Poyer over him. We're at Budda Baker easily. Like, we're getting down to like the Kareem Jackson, Darnell Savage range, which is like 17 and 18. So yeah, I think that Marcus May lies more in that mid-teens, like 15, 14, somewhere around there, not 7.
Yeah, it's probably a little too high for Marcus May. But I think they are just basing it off last year. I don't know if he would be able to do this over a long duration of time.
How didn't Derwin James not play?
Yeah, but Derwin James is Derwin James.
All right, yeah, but if you're basing it off of last year, you can't put Derwin James isn't even in the top 30.
I'm not saying they're basing it off last year, but yeah, you're right. To your point, you are right. Like, you could call him out like that. Well, Derwin James hasn't played. Like, why is it just 1 year thing?
Well, yeah. Like, listen, I don't disagree that, like, okay, if it's a 1 year thing, that's cool. Like, he deserves that 7 spot, but you can't put Derwin James at 6. The dude didn't play a snap. Like, so we're obviously not doing it off of last year.
They have to just value Derwin James that high, which I do too. Like I would have
I
him
do
in the one
too.
spot. I would have him in
Yeah,
the one spot. But like,
if we're doing it off of pure value perspective, like yeah, if it weren't for injury, he could be higher than 6. Fuck yeah, like put him higher than 6. Like go ahead. No, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you there.
yeah, it's
Like,
your
dude,
damn list. Go ahead.
like okay, maybe you have him at 2 or 3, God forbid, but like fuck, he's insane. I don't disagree there at all. Okay, so any other underrated safeties for you, Steed?
I think we kind of hit on them all, especially on the list. Buda Baker definitely was a huge one for me.
Well,
I thought that
Jordan
was really
Fuller, I
dumb.
think, is a guy that will ascend into the list.
I easily think Jordan Fuller would be in the. Yeah, he'll. Is he not on the list?
I don't think so. I'm not seeing him. Like the thing
I
is,
thought for
it's
sure they had.
weird with
But
how they
like,
because like Jeremy Chin to me is more of a linebacker than a safety, right? That's kind of like saying that Isaiah Simmons is still a safety.
yeah,
I'm not going to say Isaiah. So like, A, having him at 32, I think is ridiculous. B, I just wouldn't classify him as like if we're not going to classify Gardner Johnson as a safety, that's weird that we're saying that Jeremy Chin is a safety. I understand there's a lot of positional ambiguity at the safety position because there's like
yeah. It's
4
so
different
weird.
types of safeties on this list. Um,
I don't know. I think like Jordan Fuller kind of deserves to be ranked over a Devin McCourty. Like I understand McCourty's been
I don't know. McCourty's good, dude.
he's been really good, but I mean, I think what I mean, I'm looking at two of the end of the spectrum here. I'm looking at Jordan Fuller, who's just coming off his rookie year, and then I'm looking at Devin McCourty, who's 34. They say he's almost 34 years old.
Well, there's another dude. It's because they have Kari Willis on here. It's the other Colt safety, the young kid. I think he was a rookie last year. What's his name?
I know who you're
Julian
talking.
Blackman.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought that Julian Blackman, like that guy is great. I watched the Colts defense a lot. Colts defense was phenomenal last year,
mm-hmm.
especially against the
Great
Jets
group.
that one game where they just destroyed Sam Darnold. When I was doing my Sam Darnold analysis, oh my god, dude, Julian Blackman is unbelievably talented. That kid is going to be good for a long time. Yeah, he was a 3rd round pick in 2020. He was a rookie last year. Dude, Julian Blackman is freaking insane. I don't know how he's not in the top 32. Like, to be completely honest, I think he might be like top 25 for me, maybe even top 20 from like
Oh God. Okay.
as a safety perspective. Dude, the guy was insane last year. He was so good. Like defensive rookie of the year level good.
And see, that just makes me think it's not like that. It can't be a 1 year thing, right?
No, it's not. It's not. We already discussed. Derwin James would be on here if it's a 1 year thing. So I think that overall, looking at this PFF list, they definitely hit on some guys.
I don't hate it.
No, I don't hate it at all. Like Justin Simmons, I think there's clear shot he could be the number 1. And like, yeah, Marcus Williams is an underrated guy. Like, I
Very.
think that they take the underrated thing a little too seriously, though.
Oh yeah, they put the underrated too much in their formula when they put them through the PFF grind.
Well, yeah, they're like, okay, this guy's underrated, so we're gonna throw him like super high in the list. Like, okay, that's fine if you believe in him and they post good PFF grades, but like, I don't know. I think it's always
Might
been a
be,
thing with PFF that I think that they do the linemen a lot better than they do the defensive backs for some reason. Maybe because it's harder to judge the defensive backs from a grading standpoint, and
yeah, maybe.
you kind of just have to use a little bit of like, hey, this guy's role was this, not this, and like, hey, this dude just made a play when he shouldn't have. Yeah, you kind of have to use a little more of like a scouting mindset instead of like an analytical mindset when looking at these guys. Whereas with like running backs and linemen, it's kind of you know the analytics just works better for their role in their position.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some guys I think they definitely hit, and then there are some guys it's like, dude, I think that he's like a good 10 spots too high or too low, even more sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's just like with every list. You're not going to agree with all of them. I think they did an
Yeah,
all
but
right
Buda
job.
Baker not in the top 10. I think
Yeah,
is just absurd.
that's my biggest problem is because I'd have Buda Baker in the top 5 like easily. Probably in my top 3. Right there around with
Yeah,
Buda.
same. I think I'd have him in my top
Like,
3. Like, dude, I'm hard pressed to not put him at 1.
15. Yeah, like they didn't even put him in their top 15. Like I would just love to have a conversation with someone who works there and be like, there is no shot you believe that Buda Baker is not a top 10 safety in the league.
I don't know. I think in general they definitely knocked a lot of the more like run stuffing safeties in favor of better coverage safeties.
I mean, you look back at Jamal Adams trade last year, everybody was saying he was the best safety, and he's all the way at 10.
Yeah,
they definitely value the coverage safeties a little more.
All right, so with that being said, that's going to do it for the episode. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out, and it costs you $0.00. Thank you so much. We love you. Peace out.